So today was the first snowfall of the year. It's absolutely gorgeous outside. We've got about 6 inches of fresh snow. I'm going to get my skis out, get them all waxed up, and go hit the hills. But before I do that, I want to talk to you guys about the yew tree. The yew tree it's been a sacred tree throughout history. And I want to talk about it specifically in reference to Yggdrasil, the world tree from the Norse mythology. Now, a lot of people think about the world tree and they think of it as an ash tree. And I don't think that's the case. I think that Yggdrasil was a yew, and there's a lot of other people that agree with me, and I'm going to share with you guys some of the reasons why. First of which, the name itself. Now, to the Norse, they had another name for the yew. They called it the needle ash. So, when you're writing a poem or you're writing like an epic myth about the world around you, you tend to use metaphors to describe things. So, rather than saying the yew tree, you might say, refer to it by a different name and say, call it the evergreen ash to maybe distinguish it between the other ash, like the white ash, which has leaves that turn yellow and red in the fall and drop off. So the idea that Yggdrasil is an evergreen would indicate that the needle ash would have been the more likely tree to represent it. Now, another thing that's really fascinating about the yew is that, in essence, the tree is immortal. You can cut a yew tree down and, obviously it will die, but the yew grows in this really interesting way. It grows very slowly, and they can grow to be thousands of years old. The oldest that we know of is somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 years old. It's really difficult to tell because the way that the yew tree grows, once it gets to a certain age, the core of the tree will hollow out. So you might have a trunk that's 20 feet in diameter, but the center core is actually hollow, and people have done really interesting things to these cores over the years to try and preserve these trees without realizing how the life cycle of the yew actually works. I mean, some people have even poured cement in them, thinking that it's going to prolong the longevity of this tree. But what happens is the yew tree, as it grows out, the branches grow outwards and then they come back towards the ground. So it's like the roots grow up above the earth, come back around and go back into the soil, and as those branches of the yew touch the ground, they'll start to take root and they'll spread out and they'll sucker off, and you could actually have one yew tree that has several different root systems surrounding it. And once the tree gets old enough from that central core, it will actually start to grow suckers off that grow down into the center of the tree internally, that go to the ground, take root, and then grow up. So this tree is constantly in a cycle of death, rebirth, and renewal, which would tend to make it a place where people would go to mark changing of life cycles, etc. A place where people might go for healing and renewal. Anytime that there's something that involves the end of one thing and the beginning of another, the yew would be a good place to go to mark that ceremony, especially because these trees, being so long-lived, would have existed throughout all of your entire ancestry's lineage. So that's a reason why the Yggdrasil tree was, in all likelihood, a yew. One of the other reasons has to do with the fruit of the tree. The yew berry it's technically an aril, has a seed inside of it that is a very deadly seed, and so you have, in essence, you have that yin and yang. You have life and death. The berry itself is full of sugars, vitamin C. It's a wonderful food. It's a rich food, but it also has that incredibly intense edge of danger. It only takes 2 seeds from a yew berry to kill a horse. And now humans have a little bit higher tolerance to yew toxin, which is called taxane, than horses do. But still, the idea that if you were to eat just a handful of these berries, you would die within hours from cardiac arrest is it's an intense kind of thing. It always keeps you consciously aware of the value of life and the razor's edge that we walk on. Which brings up another point about the yew tree, Yggdrasil, and the relationship between the yew and Odin. Odin was always my favorite of the Norse gods. I know a lot of people in America my age, they really liked Thor because he was sort of like the big macho guy with a hammer. And Odin was he's the old wise guy that walks around with 2 crows and kind of knows all the lore of the world. And I've always kind of identified more with Odin than with Thor. And Odin, he hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 days, 9 nights, and went to the underworld and learned the secrets of the runes. And there's an interesting thing about the yew tree, and that is that the bark of the tree will give off a toxic gas called taxane. And if you sit under the yew tree for a long enough period of time, this toxin will start to take effect on you. And in the early stages of yew toxicity, one of the effects is that it's hallucinogenic. So throughout history, shamans have gone off and they've ingested substances, whether they be peyote, ayahuasca, psilocybin, any number of substances that are hallucinogenic that you could think of. That's something that shamans have done. And now if you sit under the yew tree long enough, it will burn your eyes and it will start to burn your skin. And one of the prices that Odin had to pay in order to go and get the knowledge of the runes was that he lost his eye. So you'll see references to Odin, some of these dolls that people will create to represent him, and he'll be missing an eye. And it may very well be that Yggdrasil, in all likelihood being a yew, was a place where Odin went and sat or tied himself to that tree and endured the hallucinogenic toxin of the yew for perhaps 9 days. Perhaps that's just a metaphorical number or a significant number, but in all likelihood, that's what happened. That's how Yggdrasil, the world tree, brought Odin that knowledge, was through the toxicity of this taxane. Well, with that, it's time for me to get out the heat gun and get my skis all waxed up. I'm going to go hit this snow. You guys have a wonderful day. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section.